So what's really integral for me, and I think the investment thesis for Cyber Capital is very much based around utility, that we believe that utility is going to generate value. And the idea as BTC today is that it has just become a purely speculative asset is not really something that I signed up for. And I think it also comes down to the idea that the value of this technology, like in terms of the actual utility and economic benefits it can provide for the world, is much greater than the value that a speculative asset could ever gain. And that's what our thesis is really based on, is that real utility. And talking about that, BCH simply works. And that's a great thing. We have low fees, we can do transactions, we can scale to meet demand. And that's the important thing. That means we can generate real adoption, we can generate real use. And that's the thing that I'm so bullish on. And that's the thing I don't see in a lot of cryptocurrencies. I mean, a lot of cryptocurrencies are very capable, but BCH actually has a real grassroots movement behind it. And that's special. There has a very special energy to it here, which I feel has value. It's the energy of just people coming together, people that believe, and people that really have a cause and believe in freedom and believe in Bitcoin, dare I say.
Now, talking about, these currencies are not just technological things in a vacuum. They are backed by a community. I think the community is part of the valuation of that currency, is that we believe in the developers and the people behind it. Describe the Bitcoin Cash community and how that differentiates itself from Litecoin, Ethereum, and whatnot.
Right. So in terms of the Bitcoin community, I think what I like about the Bitcoin community is that, like I said before, it's very utility focused. We actually want to do things. We actually want people to use it. And I think Townsville is a great example of that. Because in Townsville, we have boots on the ground here, and we have a lot of presence and a lot of real adoption. I don't see many other cryptocurrencies pushing their cryptocurrency in that way, to really spend the time and to spend the effort to convince merchants to adopt it, to gain such a big presence. That's something to be very bullish on and something to be hopeful about. And I think something that a lot of old school Bitcoiners have always wanted to see. And we saw that in the early days of BTC. We've had BTC cities before as well, but these BTC cities like Arnhem, for instance, I'm from the Netherlands, and that really it lost a lot of traction when they decided to stay with BTC and the fees went up. It just does not make sense in that context. And I know Lightning is presented as a type of panacea for BTC, but at the same time I'm very critical of Lightning. Fees are still high on Lightning. The usability is rather atrocious, and it's not there. And I'm not convinced that it will be, because of some fundamental problems like the liquidity problem, the routing problem. These are hard computer science problems and economic problems that I'm not per se convinced will be solved.
I mean, also in that there's a level of betrayal to the original principles when you go to layer 2. I mean, I personally don't trust neither Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey in creating cryptocurrency solutions if they hold it within themselves and have the lack of transparency that they have so far with their own platforms. I just think it's a total betrayal of those principles to Bitcoin, and I don't think that layer 2 solutions are fundamentally going to be a part of the future in that sense, Now, pivoting off of that, I want to hear more about what you're talking about with Bitcoin governance, because as these are communities that we are building, there's so much of a need to grow in a healthy sense, in a sense that includes the great ideas that we have and aren't just simply legacy mindsets. If we're going to be a part of the future, we have to grow in that way and help us understand how you believe this is meant to be.
All right. So I've developed a theory on Bitcoin governance. And I think this is something that we need, because I think part of the problem with the BTC fork, the BCH fork, and even the BSV fork for that matter, was that we run into big problems if we have a disagreement in our community, but then we don't have a understanding of governance or an agreement on how we resolve these disputes. And the thing is that if we don't agree on how to make decisions, then we're much likely to split as a community. Because if a decision is made, and you don't agree with that decision, but the decision was made in a way in which you agree with, then you're still more likely to still go along with it. And that's a good thing, maintaining more unity within the system. And for me, this is a concept that I've been exploring, and I refer to this as the Goldilocks zone of blockchain governance, in that a blockchain should be not too easy to disrupt or change, but also not too hard to disrupt or change. And kind of Right. A blockchain needs to be able to change. And if a blockchain needs to be able to change, we need some form of governance. So if I'll expand on that now. So my theory of governance is that I've broken it down into 3 main decision groups and phases. The first decision-making group and phase is actually the implementations. Because the implementations need to write the code, need to present an idea. And without code, without an idea, there's nothing for us to adopt. There's nothing for us to rally around or rally against, let's say. So that is a critical first stage in decision making. Now, for me, a critical point, and one of the reasons I really like BCH as well is because I feel this is quite ingrained in the culture here, is that we have to have multiple implementations. Because without multiple implementation, if we have a single monolithic implementation like BTC does today, then they become like a gatekeeper for the next phases in governance, and then it becomes highly dictatorial. Even I even refer to Bitcoin currently as a type of GitHub dictatorship.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Reddit whole censorship and suppressing of ideas during the 2016 was emblematic of those problems, you know.
Yeah, censorship is definitely emblematic and kind of ties into the psychology and the mindset of people involved in this. And another thing I love about BCH is we're very anti-censorship. And I really believe in the free market of ideas, and that by having debates, by having open discussions, that we all have better ideas. You know, through a dialectic, we gain a synthesis of greater understanding. You know, that's important. Now, in my theory of governance, the second stage of decision making, and this is also a very important one, is the miners. Now, the reason why the miners are so important and also the best phase of decision making is because they have skin in the game. You know, miners have this giant carrot and stick hanging over them, you know, that incentivize them to do what's in their own best interest. Now, the beautiful thing about a blockchain is that it's a flat network. So whatever's in the best interest of the miners is also supposed to be what is in the best interest of the entire network, therefore what is in the best interest of the public good. You know, this is a key element in this decision-making process. Now, the third stage of decision-making, in my view, is actually the market itself, being the final stage of decision-making. Because if the implementations create code, miners decide on that code, right? Miners vote on that code through their hashing power. If it is a non-controversial change, you know, the fork happens, we stay unified. Right, and it continues. It's just a protocol upgrade, not a big deal. We shouldn't be scared of hard forks. You know, and I'm just going to diverge a bit. Hard forks are a superior governance mechanism to soft forks because hard forks require active consent versus soft forks requiring passive consent. That's a very important difference. Now, what that means is that if it is a controversial change, a split occurs. Now, I consider the splitting mechanism to be a critical governance mechanism of Bitcoin. We need to really embrace this. And if someone splits off as a minority, we should, you know, to a certain extent cheer them on and say, you know what, you have the freedom to succeed. You have the freedom to live under the rules that you want. You have the freedom not to agree with a change if you want. I mean, that's Bitcoin.
It's an exit is what you're saying, right?
Exactly. And then what ends up happening is that once a split occurs, we end up having 2 versions of the chain on the market. And then what becomes the ultimate arbitrator of dominance is the market itself. And that is where everyone has a voice and everyone has a choice. And that to me is such a beautiful thing. And this is something that I'm trying to promote now as a more solid idea around how to govern a decentralized blockchain like BCH. And this to me is our best bet at how to gain good governance between multiple implementations, miners having skin in the game, voting over these implementations, and then finally the market determining dominance between alternatives.
Now let me add a little bit of challenge to that and a little bit here. When we talk about market dominance, I mean, are you talking like kind of merely about price in some level? Like, you know, if one drops to 0, we would definitely say that is a failure of a chain. But right now we're looking at BTC and BCH. BTC is clearly higher in terms of price for per coin. However, does that necessarily reflect one, an accuracy in terms of information and knowledge in this market? 2, how long would it take for that kind of correction to exist? Because we're looking at 2 years after the fork now. And then 3, just the information that is out there is often misleading in the sense that, like, BTC, Bitcoin Core, was able to continue holding on to the BTC ticker symbol, which if you're a normie, if you're a new person to this industry, you will just automatically assume it is the correct and original and normal Bitcoin, and that BCH is actually the weird one. How do you kind of synthesize the idea of the market's solution to this as being one of accuracy or strength, or merely the best that we have available to us?
I mean, this is a very good question. And this is something that I ask myself almost every day. It's really the $100 billion question, if you will. And, pardon me. And, ultimately, it comes down to, there's this idea of a rational market. And this is, I think, part of the reason why my fund has a long-term focus, because over the short term, markets can be extremely irrational, especially in cryptocurrency, where there is a severe lack of understanding and a lack of general common knowledge, that you get these, what I would view as somewhat a perversion of the market in terms of its rationality. Now, what I'm betting on, and I'm really putting my money where my mouth is here. What I'm betting on is that over the longer run, the market should become more rational. And over the longer run, people are going to start to understand the differences. And people are going to start to see the flaws in BTC. So I've been predicting this for a number of years, but I'm still convinced BTC will lose its dominance over the longer run, because it simply doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense from a utility perspective. But it doesn't even make sense from a store of value perspective, in that a good store of value is a currency first, a medium of exchange. And it also doesn't make sense in the long run, in that part of the argument for BTC is that it's a good store of value because it's so secure. Now, that's really where I start to question things, because BTC, in less than 6 years now, I think we're going to have 2 halvenings. That's a 75% reduction in inflation. Right? That's going to drastically reduce the security of the chain. And if fees can't replace the value generated from inflation, then BTC is going to start running into some serious security problems. Now, last time I calculated this at current scale, without the block reward, BTC requires about $60 per transaction. Right? In order for it to remain secure, in order for it not to become 51% attacked. Now, some people might say, yes, we're going to get $1,000 transaction fees on BTC. And in all honesty, those are the BTC advocates that I do respect, because they're consistent in their views. And they're honest about it, and I can respect that. But the thing is I just don't think we're going to reach such high fee levels. I think that we get fee spikes, and when the fee spikes, then people leave BTC and they go to alternatives. And then you have this cycle that continues, which is leaching value over to other blockchains such as BCH, and unfortunately also things like Visa and PayPal. Unfortunately, it's part of the tragedy of the situation we find ourselves in now. But yes, this is a good question. This is something I have to constantly question for myself. If I didn't believe in a rational market, I suppose I would be invested in BTC instead.
I think what you mentioned there is really important, the idea of when these corrections happen. And I do agree that it's during these fee spikes when suddenly what was promised to you absolutely is not there. The promise is broken. And we definitely saw that quarter 4 2017. We definitely saw that. We're beginning to see that again, I think, as popularity has come back to the market. How long do you think it's going to be till the next crisis in this, and we're going to have to see a true flippening between the two?
That's a great question. Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I'll say that, and I'll also premise this.
You're not going to be legally held for this.
And I'm also going to premise this is not investment advice. Well, I've been calling for the flippening since I think 2016 now, or somewhere along those lines. And yeah, my hope is that it happens sooner than later. I think absolute latest would be, and this is worst case scenario, where the network actually has to become insecure. So now we're looking at about a 6-year timeline for that. But I'm actually more optimistic than that. I think that we're most likely moving into another bull run now. It's the classic boom and bust cycle of cryptocurrency. This is the 7th bubble that we're likely moving in now. So this is something I think we just need to accept as being the volatility of the space, obviously. My prediction here is I would expect fee spikes to bring more attention to the underlying problems. And I suppose you can edit this out.
I don't think you'll be able to hear it on the mic.
Oh, okay. Well, you have to edit this out now anyway, but
I mean, just can't hear it. This mic is actually it's only like
it's a dynamic. Yeah, I get it. Polar pattern. So, what was I saying here? Sorry. Oh yeah, the rationality of the market. Right. So I do expect a fee spikes to come along, and I do expect to be surges in popularity in cryptocurrency. And I think because there's still many people saying out there promoting the idea that, hey, the fees are low. So it's not a problem. But I feel this is very disingenuous, because if you talk to the genuine BTC supporters, they will tell you that the fundamental design of BTC today is one of a high fee, low volume network. And this is a fundamentally different approach to achieve the fees required for security than what BCH is now approaching, which is a high volume, low fee network. And I consider the high volume, low fee network a far more viable approach, because it has so much more utility attached to it, so much more usefulness attached to it. And if you look at the value of gold, something like gold today, it dwarfs in comparison with the value of cash or currency, or all of the different things that we can actually build on top of a blockchain. And that's exciting, and that's where the real value is. The real value is in utility. The real value is in what is useful. The real value is in real economic benefits. Now that's something I'm bullish about. I'm not here saying this is a casino. I'm buying this because I think the value is going to go up, and that's the only reason why I'm buying this. No, I'm buying this because I believe in the future of this. I believe in the significance of this and the importance of this for our civilization, to create better forms of governance, to have more transparency, to have self-sovereignty, to have censorship resistance, to have immutability, that history is no longer written by the victors. It's profound. It's the most important invention since the internet. And in many ways, investing in BTC is not believing in cryptocurrency, not believing in the potential of this technology. And I'll stand here and I'll say with much confidence that I do believe in the potential of this technology. And that's the exciting future that I'm looking forward towards, and the exciting future that I think most of the people here are building with passion. And that's something that I think people need to start to see and recognize as well about BCH, is you have passionate people here, you have smart people here that are doing real development as well, real breakthroughs in terms of the technology, and building something that is useful. And that's beautiful, and that's the vision of Satoshi. And I have to say here that this idea of the vision of Satoshi, I think, is it's not like we should create BCH because Satoshi told us to do it in this way. We should create it because we agree with that vision. We agree with that idea.
not dogmatic.
Exactly. Not dogmatic, but rational, and thinking for ourselves, and making these trade-offs in our own minds, thinking independently and reasoning these things in a rational way. And I think if we start to apply more rationality as a whole, as a community, we'll also start to see a more rational market. And I hope that people can start to have more intellectual honesty about this. And that we can really come together and build a better world, with less toxicity and more clarity, and a brighter future for everyone.
I don't think I'm going to be able to end it better than that. Justin, thank you so much, buddy.